Hello, my name is Tyler Silva, and in this speech I will be regaling you with a life-changing experience which I was subjected to 2 years ago during my senior year of high school while taking a course known as AP U.S. in Comparative Government, which eventually enabled me to realize that the United States is largely bereft of a truly left-wing party. So this speech will largely be comprised of 2 points, with the first point being a brief overview of the history of the Democratic Party since the advent of the 20th century, while the second point will draw a comparison between the Democratic Party in the United States and the UK Conservative Party in Great Britain, as the UK Conservative Party is one of the parties which I actually studied during comparative government during the second semester of my senior year in high school. And I believe that this is a valuable comparison because the UK Conservative Party is a center-right party. However, I believe that it is actually further left on the political spectrum than the Democratic Party is. So now to begin with my first point, as you may know, the Democratic Party, until 1964, was actually the conservative party in this country, whereas the Republican Party was largely considered the liberal party. And now this began to change in 1932 with the ascendancy of Franklin Delano Roosevelt and the advent of the New Deal program, as well as the formation of the New Deal coalition in Congress. However, the Democratic Party still was largely comprised of racist Southern Democrats who were segregationists. So you can't really say that the Democratic Party was a left-wing party at this time because even though President Roosevelt may have passed socially progressive policies, it was still replete with a great deal of segregationist politicians such as Strom Thurmond and George Wallace, for instance. Now, the Democratic Party, as aforementioned, actually became the so-called Liberal Party in this country in 1964 when Johnson legislated the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlawed segregation in this country. And he was actually essentially excoriated for this by the presidential nominee from the Republican Party named Barry Goldwater, who alleged that this was an infringement upon the principle of limited government. And so essentially, this led the two parties to essentially flip platforms and rendered the Democratic Party further left than the Republican Party, with the Republican Party now becoming more conservative than the Democrats. However, this does not necessarily mean that the Democratic Party became a left-wing party because the 1960s also saw the rise to prominence of neoliberalism and neoconservatism, with neoconservatism becoming increasingly popular during the 1980s as well under the Reagan administration, and the ascendancy of political coalitions such as the Moral Majority, which essentially forced the Democratic Party to move further to the right of the political spectrum, such that every president we've had since Bill Clinton, who has been a Democrat, has been a corporatist neoliberal, essentially. And so now on to my second point, in which I will compare the Democratic Party with the UK Conservative Party. But first, I actually have a visual aid here, which I would like to show you, which is a textbook which I used while studying for my comparative government exam during senior year. And if I may, I would like to read a brief excerpt from this book, which details the ideology of the Conservative Party. So it says, the Conservative Party dominated British politics between World War II and 1997, holding majority in Parliament for all but 16 years during that period. The Conservative Party is the main party on the right, but it has prospered partly because it traditionally has been a pragmatic, rather than an ideological party. Although the party supported a market-controlled economy, privatization, and fewer social welfare programs during the 1980s under the leadership of Margaret Thatcher, the Conservatives moved back toward the center under Prime Minister John Major in the 1990s. So, as you can see from that excerpt, even though the UK Conservative Party also conforms to the doctrine of neoliberalism, like the Democratic Party, it has essentially done so well in Parliament since the beginning of the 20th century, largely because it also supports a great deal of leftist policies. Now, for instance, these would include the these would include support for the maintenance of a strong welfare state, which the Conservative Party has supported since 1948, when the National Health Service was created by the Labour Party, in addition to support for price controls on prescription drugs, a ban on guns, which was implemented in 1997 and has been retained ever since then, as well as adequate maternity leave, and even gay marriage, which interestingly enough uh, was actually legalized by the UK Conservative Party under David Cameron in 2014. Now, conversely, in the United States, the Democratic Party largely does not support universal health care. It does not support price controls for prescription drugs. It does not really support a strong welfare state. It doesn't support banning guns. And even though it does support gay marriage largely, the Democratic Party did not help to legalize gay marriage, as gay marriage was legalized by the Supreme Court in the court case Obergefell v. Hodges in 2015. Now, in addition to this information, I think that it's also valuable to uh, discuss the Democratic Party's sort of uh, their disdain for progressives within the party, I suppose, because there have actually been a great deal of leftists within the Democratic Party which potentially could have become president and helped to move the party potentially toward the center, if not center left. But they were largely precluded from doing this by the party establishment. A few notable examples of these individuals would be Henry Wallace, who was FDR's vice president until 1944, when he was actually ousted by the Democratic establishment at the vice presidential convention and replaced by Harry Truman, who didn't even seek the nomination, as well as Ted Kennedy in 1980, who actually lost the Democratic primary because the establishment largely backed Jimmy Carter. And even as recently as 2016 and 2020, when Bernie Sanders' campaigns for the presidency were overtly sabotaged in 2016 and more covertly sabotaged in 2020, especially during the day before Super Tuesday, in which the Democratic establishment pushed for certain candidates to drop out in order to split the vote and have the general populace support Joe Biden for president. But irrespective of that, I hope that my detailing of the history of the Democratic Party, as well as the drawing of a comparison between the Democratic Party and the UK Conservative Party, has helped to elucidate the fact that the Democratic Party is not actually a left-wing party, but is considered a center-right party, at least in every other industrialized democracy which exists throughout the world. Even though it may be technically considered a left-wing party in the United States, but that's really only because the political spectrum is so far shifted to the right, such that the Republican Party is essentially a reactionary fundamentalist party. So by comparison, the Democrats seem like a left-wing party, though they aren't in actuality. So I hope that this has, again, helped to dispel the fallacy that the Democratic Party is a left-wing party. And thank you for listening to my speech.